In the past couple of videos, I've mentioned that I've just got back from a Tet vacation in the Vietnamese countryside with my wife's parents. What I don't think I mentioned in those previous videos was that my wife and the kids are actually staying up in the provinces with the grandparents for another couple weeks by themselves. So I actually have some time to myself for the next couple weeks, and I took advantage of that time to watch a movie last night. Perhaps there'll be more movies coming in the next couple weeks, more movie reviews on this channel. We'll see. Now, every time I talk about movies on this channel, I have to mention my movie situation. And apologies if you've heard this spiel before, but my current situation is this. I don't really have access to any movies. I'm living in Vietnam. I don't have access to regular TV. I don't have Netflix or Disney Plus or DVDs or anything. I just watch stuff off of YouTube. So I find whatever movies happen to be on YouTube, and that's my selection choice. The good news is we do have a smart TV in the apartment that we are currently renting. So I do get to watch it on the big screen, but I'm limited to whatever I can find on YouTube. And as you know, finding stuff on YouTube is touch and go. But I was in the mood for a movie last night. I was searching through a list of classic movies on YouTube, and I stumbled across His Girl Friday, which I had never seen before, and I don't really know much about, other than the fact I recognized it was a famous movie. I had vague memories of hearing about this movie when I was young. It's a movie from 1940, so it was already quite old by the time I was born. But I think when I was young, there was a greater nostalgia for these classic movies than there is nowadays. I don't know, maybe I'm out of touch. But I think, as the generation that remembers these movies has kind of aged up, people remember them less now. I also think my parents' generation saw these movies more on TV than my generation did. So I think my parents' generation was more familiar with these movies, even though they were before my parents' time as well. But anyways, it was a movie I felt like I remembered hearing people praise a lot when I was younger. I remembered hearing people talk about this movie as like a really classic, good movie. But that was really all I connected with it. Now, there are actually several copies of this movie on YouTube at the moment. I'll link in the description down below to the copy I watched, which is a good copy, which also has the option of turning on the subtitles, which, as I'll explain in a little bit, might just be helpful for this movie. But there are so many copies on YouTube. I thought, what's going on? This can't be in the public domain, right? This is a classic movie that's still probably profitable for its studio and is not old enough to be in the public domain yet, but looked it up on Wikipedia, and sure enough, it is in the public domain. Now, apparently it didn't have to be. Movies from 1940s can still be copyrighted, but for whatever reason, I don't believe Wikipedia says, the studio did not renew the copyright on this. So it's in the public domain, and there are now multiple copies available on YouTube, which you can watch guilt-free if you wanted to. I before I watched this movie, I went over to the Wikipedia page and just looked at it and realized there was quite a long write-up on the Wikipedia page. And you can quite often judge the cultural impact of a certain piece of media by the length of the Wikipedia page. So just to confirm that this was actually a classic movie and just not some sort of junk on some sort of old junk. And then I deliberately didn't read any more about it than that. I knew it was something about a murder case and some sort of detective, like vaguely film noir type thing, but I didn't research it any more than that because I wanted to have the experience of discovering this movie as I watched it, which is probably the best way to discover it. Which, if you're interested, stop this review right now. Go ahead and watch the movie. Link in the description down below. Lots of copies on YouTube. Because I'm just going to talk about everything. I'm going to spoil everything and dissect this movie as much as I can. So, this was a really good movie. I am very glad I watched it. Uh, Maybe I should have said that before the spoiler warning. Oh, okay, but too late now. Um, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie. The dialogue was so great. The quips moved at such a quick pace. Really enjoyed watching this movie. In fact, one of the best movies I think I've seen in some time. Uh, has its faults, but we'll get around to talking about the positives and the negatives as we go. So this is one of those movies where, as you watch it, you're thinking, okay, there's so many cliches in here. In particular, when you think of a movie from the 1940s, right? Especially like a film noir movie, right? You think about like the fast-talking dame smoking cigars in the newsroom. Sorry, smoking cigarettes in the newsroom. Um, the quippy dialogues. There's even a gangster in this movie who like just looks like a stereotypical gangster from the 1940s movies. Some of the characters, particularly the female lead, has that kind of 1940s wise guy accent. I'm not going to try to imitate it. I'm not good at doing voices, but you know what I mean. That 1940s gangster voice, or I guess in this case, the 1940s smart talking dame voice that gets parodied so much in pop culture. It's all here in this movie, and of course, whenever you see an old movie that is loaded with cliches, you've got to think to yourself, well, maybe this is where the cliches came from, right? Maybe this is the movie that started all these cliches, and perhaps this is. I've not done the research to discover what was the first movie to do what. Um, but it's a very stereotypical 1940s movie, whether it was establishing the cliches or borrowing the cliches, I don't know. Um, and this is a movie that's got a lot of fast talking quips, as is somewhat stereotypical for these 1940s movies. I forgot to look this up before I filmed the review. What is there's The Big Sleep, was that the other 1940s movie I'm thinking of that also had a lot of fast talking quips going back and forth, the Humphrey Bogart movie. A few other movies I've seen in the past like this. And it is a reminder. Quite often we think of older movies as moving at a slower pace because people had different attention spans back then. And that by and large is true. And maybe in terms of plotting, this movie does move at a slower pace. But in terms of dialogue, they are not slowing down this dialogue at all. The characters are just speaking so fast, and they're talking over each other, and the zingers are going back and forth so quickly. You can keep track of them, but just barely, in a fun way, in a way that really keeps you on the edge of your seat while you're watching this. And I'm watching this movie, and I think to myself, well, there's a few things that you notice straight off, just watching it without any background knowledge at all. One is, I was fairly sure that this felt like a stage play. Now, I mean, a lot of older movies do feel like stage plays because that's old movies was when the film writers were transitioning from stage plays to film writing. But I think it's generally true, isn't it, that whenever you watch a movie that's got really sharp dialogue, especially an older movie, it usually means it came from a stage play. I don't know what it is. Maybe harsher competition in the theater or whatever. But the movies that have the best dialogues, especially in older movies, tend to have originated as stage plays. So this is, if you look on Wikipedia, this is originally a remake of a remake of something that started off as a stage play as the front page, and you can kind of tell not only because the dialogue is really sharp, but also because all the action happens in kind of set scenes. Like there are certain rooms where all the action plays out, and just like you're seeing a setup on the stage. Um, the other thing is, again, because this is based on a stage play, there's not a lot of action in the sense of like not a lot of swashbuckling, not a lot of car chases, and by not a lot, I mean pretty much none at all. But the actors and actresses are just speaking so fast and at such a clip that you think to yourself, even without any action going on, they must be just exhausting themselves. I mean, I feel tired just kind of watching this. How, I, how exhausted must they have been to perform this, and to do all the multiple takes that you need to get it on film. You can just kind of feel tired for them watching it. And you think, okay, there's no special effects, there's no fight scenes in this movie, but this must have been a little bit difficult to film, right? This must have necessitated a few retakes, some of these dialogues, to get it that snappy and that quick. And sure enough, you look on the Wikipedia page, and the movie went like 7 days over budget or something like that. So it's yeah, the effect that they achieved here did take some work. And a little bit more research into this reveals that they were definitely going for an effect. So when they made this movie, the director, who I don't know a lot about, but whose name is Howard Hawks, I believe. Let me double check that on Wikipedia. Yeah, Howard Hawks, who's I recognize it as a famous name, but I don't know much about him. He wanted to make the fastest movie, like the fastest dialogue movie ever. So he deliberately was going for the record here. And he was comparing this to other movies with fast dialogue, and he just wanted to break all the records. So he deliberately had his characters kind of speaking as fast as they could go while still maintaining intelligibility. And he also had them talk over each other as much as possible while still having things be intelligible. And exactly how he found that happy medium, I have no idea, because obviously if everyone's talking at once, it's unintelligible. But he, according to the internet, he had marked the dialogue with certain tags so that the characters would kind of start to speak while another character was still finishing, so that they're overlapping the dialogue just enough to give you that feeling of everybody talking at once, while still having everything being intelligible. And the quips are great. Now, not every one of them is a home run, admittedly, but it's kind of like those Zucker Brothers movies, like Airplane or the Hot Shots, or those types of movies where the jokes are just going so quickly that if a couple of them don't land, but the next one lands, it doesn't even matter because they're coming so quickly. And I don't remember the last time I enjoyed a movie this much. There were plenty of chuckles coming from me while I was watching this on my couch. Now, to get into the flaws of this movie, well, actually, sorry, let me back up a moment. Cary Grant plays the male lead in this movie. There's a whole bunch more people in it, but Cary Grant is the only one I recognize. Now, I've seen Cary Grant in a few things. I've seen him in Suspicion by Alfred Hitchcock and North by Northwest by Alfred Hitchcock. I saw him in Gunga Din. But all those movies are movies I've not seen in like 20 years. Or more. So it's been a while since I've seen Cary Grant in a movie recently. He was, of course, as you know, back in his day, a huge star, and had a reputation for being incredibly charming and charismatic, and all that star power. And you can see it in this movie. I mean, boy, that guy is charming and charismatic, and brings you can see in this movie why he was a star. Now, that being said, I think there are a couple of scenes where he does seem to be overacting, where he's kind of hamming it up a little bit too much with the dialogue. Um, but to be fair to him, I'm not entirely sure it's his fault. I think some of this dialogue that he's given is a little bit over the top. Like his character has to at certain points be a little bit overly glad-handed, or a little bit overly conniving, or a little bit overly friendly. There are a few scenes that struck me as a little bit over the top, but I think one of the most notable ones in the first one was the scene where he's being introduced to his ex-wife's fiance, and he either deliberately or mistakenly mistakes an old man for her fiance, and then when he's corrected, he blames the mistake on everybody else instead of acknowledging his error. I'm not describing it very well, but if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That scene, he seemed a little bit too over the top. Like it was obviously somebody putting on an act instead of like a genuine. But I think, you know, the, given the lines he had to deliver, given the part he had to play in that scene that came from the script, it was kind of an over the top scene to begin with. That being said, though, it is notable that his co-star, the female lead, who I is a name I don't recognize, Rosalind Russell. I'm sure she's somebody I should know if I was better versed in classic films, but I don't. She plays the female star Hildy Johnson. She never gives the impression of being over the top, and they're both using the same script. Although apparently there was a lot of ad libbing in the production of this movie, so who knows how much of a factor that was. So yeah, a few things that are a little bit over the top, particularly with Cary Grant's character. I think is mostly with Cary Grant's character. The other criticism I would have of this movie, is if I'm into criticisms, is will the individual scenes played great? The story was a little bit of a mess. And I'm not sure it entirely made sense, although, like I said, the movie is moving at such a fast pace that I could have missed something. It's a type of movie that you want to rewatch. I'm not, I'm not entirely sure everything made sense. There seemed to be a few holes in it, and certainly the zigs and the zags the plot took um, did not, in my mind, make a very compelling narrative arc. So characters were doing things, but looking at the arc of the film, you didn't get things moving in a direction that seemed to make a lot of sense, or that had satisfying payoffs. Now, looking at the Wikipedia page on this, Wikipedia notes that one of the interesting things about this movie is Cary Grant's character never learns any lessons. He kind of starts off as a what's the word here, scoundrel type character, and then he ends up as a scoundrel type character. And apparently, this was quite typical of Howard Hawks' movie, amoral characters who don't learn lessons. This was his style. So maybe some of that's intentional, but all the twists and turns this movie took, with the murderer escaping and then the murderer coming in, and Again, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It didn't seem to me to fit together well. It didn't seem to have an arc that would want to pull me through, except for the individual scenes themselves were so full of energy that it's the type of movie that you watch for the scenes, not for the overall story. There's one particular example I'm thinking of, and again, if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I'll try and recount this briefly. There's the somewhat romantic interest of the killer, Molly Malone, goes into the newsroom where all the newspaper guys are playing poker. And she wants to tell them off for writing lies about her in the press. And they are, throughout the whole movie, they're just wisecracking constantly because that's the kind of movie it is. All the characters are quipping constantly. And she comes in and she's emotional and she's telling them how upset they are, and they're just wisecracking with her. And then she hears the sound. The press room is right outside the prison. I guess presumably because it's covering the prison was their beat. But they're practicing for the hanging tomorrow, and there's the thud of the sandbags and the trapdoor opening. And she hears the sound. She goes over to the window. She asks what that is, and they're again joking with her. They say they're practicing for your boyfriend tomorrow. They're gonna give him a pain in the neck, blah 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 blah. And she at this kind of gallows humor, so to speak, she breaks down and she screams at them, "You're not even human." And the Hildy Johnson character, who's in the room trying to write a story while this is all going on, has to kind of come and comfort her and lead her out. And it's a scene where it kind of leads from the natural joking of the newspapermen, which is what they've been doing this whole movie, to sort of without the movie really indicating a shift in tone, all of a sudden we've gone too far. And then it really highlights the fact that we've gone too far and we're making really cruel jokes when she has the emotional breakdown and screams at them that they're not even human. And the actress who plays her does a good job of conveying this very desperate emotion. And after she gets let out of the room, then the newspaper men are just silent. And in a movie where people are constantly talking over each other the whole time, this silence is very noticeable. I'm not sure how long it goes on, like 10 seconds or something. And they can't even look at each other. They're looking down at the ground. They're throwing the cards down, but they don't want to play. And they know that they've crossed a line. And then Hildy Johnson comes back in. And she just looks at him and she says, "Gentlemen of the press," and gives a kind of sardonic eyebrow raise. And then she goes back to her story. And that I felt watching that, when I watched it, I thought, wow, that was a scene. Like that was a scene that really conveyed some, went from a humor scene to all of a sudden really conveying some deep emotions there. And I was impressed by how emotionally invested I was in that scene. But, and here's the thing, it didn't seem to go anywhere. Then we were right back to the wisecracks. And moreover, despite having a couple scenes like that in the movie, which had very powerful acting, very powerful emotions, the movie as a whole was keeping you from getting invested in the overall stakes of the plot. So the overall plot is that there's a man who's going to be hanged, and he's not wrongfully convicted. He did do the murder, but he's probably insane, and for political reasons, the sheriff and the mayor want to to rush ahead with the hanging anyway. So they're hanging a man who shouldn't be hanged because he should be not guilty by reason of insanity. Um, so that's the kind of the MacGuffin that's keeping this movie running. I mean, the real plot is the romantic story between Cary Grant's character and Hildy Johnson's character, but the thing that's providing the engine to keep the story moving is that this hanging that's going on tomorrow with this man who shouldn't be hanged, which is something that occasionally the script will tease you with getting emotionally invested in it. But every time you're tempted to get emotionally invested in, the script will just kind of pull it back, because the characters themselves are never emotionally invested in this. I mean, Cary Grant is somewhat of a scoundrel, but somewhat of a crusading journalist, and he really wants to see justice done on this case, to the extent that he's willing to just work himself to death on it. But he can't stop himself from making quips on it, so he doesn't take it seriously. Hildy Johnson's character will occasionally take it seriously, but the script makes it very clear that she would throw it all away to go with her fiance on the honeymoon if it became convenient, or if she got too aggravated with Cary Grant. So the whole thing, the movie prevents you from getting emotionally involved in the story itself. Now, some of this, of course, is intentional. According to Wikipedia, this is a classic example of what is called a screwball comedy, which is popular comedy from the 1930s to the early 1950s, in which I guess you're not supposed to take anything seriously. The murderer himself is a sympathetic character, but he's in a bunch of ridiculous scenes. One of the I think this was a legitimately funny scene, but when he's being examined by the court-appointed doctor to see if he's actually going to be insane or not, and the doctor is so concerned about his interview with the press and talking to the sheriff that he keeps forgetting that the condemned man is actually in the room, and he says, "Oh, I forgot you were there. I was so busy doing other stuff," as if like the man's life is just a complete afterthought. Which, to be fair, is the joke here. But if that's the tone we're going for, if it's just kind of a screwball comedy, then what was the point of Molly Malone's little breakdown in that brilliant scene where the newspaper men had realized had gone too far? I mean, it packs a good emotional punch, but to what end? And then when Molly Malone's character comes back again, and she has another hysterics, and she jumps out the window, and that seems to be that, and that's the last we see of her, and that's kind of her character arc, I guess. It seemed to me that the movie was at times flirting with genius in terms of having a deeper level of emotional investment, but then just kept pulling back from it. And because of that, the scenes that do have greater emotional investment, I think, sit a little bit awkwardly in the movie as it's being constructed now. Of course, all that being said, don't listen to what I have to say, because God knows I'm just a stupid Philistine, and I don't know anything about movie criticism. That was just my that was just my gut reaction, I guess, as I was watching the movie. It's interesting, actually, looking at the Wikipedia article for this movie. As of this date, Wikipedia is constantly in a state of flux. But as of this date, Wikipedia has a rather long section in this movie called Interpretation, in which they kind of deconstruct some of the film techniques that are being used here to show you what the director is doing. It's written in a style which I actually don't think is proved by Wikipedia. I think it I don't know. I think I suspect at some point in the future it may get deleted or flagged for rewriting or something like that, because I think you're supposed to you're not supposed to put those interpretations directly as facts into Wikipedia. You're supposed to say like so and so said this film, blah 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 blah. But anyways, as it's written now, the Wikipedia article has a lot of interesting stuff, which I did not catch at all watching this movie for the first time. Um, Stuff about some of the symbolism in the film, stuff about how the framing of shots during the film was supposed to symbolize stuff, stuff about how the distinction between the fast talking characters in the film and the slow talking characters, which was meant to make a distinguish between the intelligent and the unintelligent characters in this film. You know, if you're a film buff and you kind of go in for that, kind of dissecting the art of film, you'd probably find a lot to eat up in this film. Of course, if you're a film buff, you've seen this movie already, haven't you? Yeah, I didn't catch it myself, but I enjoyed reading Wikipedia's dissection of it. Yeah, what else is there to say about this film? I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. After all, there's no point in making a review of me talking about a movie that's longer than the movie itself. So let me know what you thought about the movie. And if you haven't seen it yet, I know I spoiled a lot, but you've still got a lot of pleasure waiting for you. The individual scenes, the quips, the dialogue, I haven't spoiled all of that yet. So you can still enjoy it. Check out one of the links in the description down below, or just search it yourself. The movie is in the public domain and freely available on YouTube.